What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I want to break down what's going on with the economic calendar for tomorrow, talk about some big news involving Israel, Iran, and many different countries, not to mention some news in the USA involving some strikes. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Weeble link. If you deposit any amount of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. Deposit $500 and you're guaranteed 20. Deposit over $25,000 and you're guaranteed 75. The offer ends very soon in just 4 weeks. Anyways, now let's talk about the markets. So we saw quite a bit of a red day today as SPY dumped. So did the markets. We saw a couple of stocks that tried to hold up like Meta, but overall the market is still looking kind of weak, just barely holding support right now. So if the support holds, that's going to be a very, very key factor for technical analysis for tomorrow. And it also is going to hinge upon what happens with the news overnight. So please be very mindful of that. That's why I believe it's very important for me to talk about the news before I break down the charts. So what's happening for tomorrow? Tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, October 2nd, 2024. We have Tesla announcing their deliveries, which is going to be a big catalyst for them. But for the broader markets, there's not really much data coming up. We just have some mortgage data in the morning. Then we have a couple of Fed speakers like Hammock and a few others, but I'm not really seeing much. There's not really anything too crazy. We have Bowman giving a speech in Barkin, but very, very minor stuff, just a couple of Fed speakers and some mortgage data. Now, I do want to mention that right now the market is still in favor of greed, as the market's still at an elevated level. We're still technically above the previous all-time highs that used to be at the 565 area. Now, even though we're below all-time highs, the market has dipped quite a bit, but we're still barely holding support, so we'll be watching that very carefully. The market's going to likely dip closer to being between extreme greed and neutral, and whether or not we get a balance will be the bigger determiner of if this continues to pivot closer to neutral and fear. On top of this, we also have momentum at greed. The majority of momentum is at greed right now, but it's been dipping a little bit. We also have the puts and call option ratio trying to hold this key level, which is a sign that there's a balance coming. We're starting to see some more shorts piling in. However, whether or not we get a spike depends on the price action for tomorrow. Volatility right now is neutral. We have a gap to fill above on the VIX. We'll see if this continues to pump. So far, it's on that trend. So, what's happening so far around the world? The first thing, the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that there have been a lot of tensions in the Middle East. Now, like I always say, guys, I'm not here to pick sides or give you guys the full history lesson. That's not my job. This history goes back hundreds, if not thousands of years, and I want to be very unbiased when saying so. So, a lot of things have been happening for the last few months, which eventually has led Iran to launching missiles at Israel. After this happened, right, it's very, very intense, very sad. Iran has just stated that they are going to just stop. They claim they're going to stop if Israel does not retaliate. However, Israel is now saying that they're going to do so. They're going to be launching missiles back or do something else like that. So that's going to be very, very important. I don't know for sure though if to what extent they're going to try to retaliate. We haven't officially seen that yet. If it happens overnight, though, that could be very, very important for the broader markets because this might not just be one of those typical events that happen in Israel. This could lead to like a larger war. And that's the big concern amongst a lot of investors out there. So, one thing that's worth mentioning is that the US is getting involved. One could look at this as something similar to like a proxy war. I'm not going to put it that way quite yet. And I really hope it doesn't end up leading to something like that. But the US is already getting involved trying to help Israel. So we'll see how things end up going. I personally don't want there to be war at all. If this does lead to even more countries getting involved, we have Lebanon that's involved. We have Israel alongside the USA, Iran, and many other countries. If this ends up continuing to become a lot more intense, this could lead to more fears and it could affect the price of oil. That could eventually affect our markets. So be very, very mindful of that. This was one big factor affecting the markets. Also, this news right here, there's a very historic strike that's going on in the US, especially because of the fact that it's going to continue to affect supply chains. That's going to have a bigger effect on broader markets. That's why we saw Apple sell off the way it did. It's a dock workers strike at seaports. It's at the U.S. East and Gulf coasts. It's going to likely wreak havoc on global supply chains and the U.S. economy. Supply chains were disrupted by what happened in the Red Sea earlier this year, and now this is another big catalyst. So we'll have to see how things end up going. I really hope that negotiations are made soon, but this is affecting supply chains, so this is another big factor for different companies. That's why we saw Apple dip the way it did. This is affecting them, and other companies as well may follow these trends. So What do I think is going to happen to the markets? Well, it all depends on what happens with the news tomorrow. I want to give you guys the bullish and bearish cases and talk about what's more probable. So, for SPY, to start things off, because SPY is one of the most popular stocks, I like to start off with this one. We have our 50 EMA on the 4-hour time frame at 567.5. That's our 50 EMA. That's going to be trying to hold our support. If we bounce off this, there could be an attempt to get back up to 570. If we lose 567.57, the 50 EMA, we're going all the way down to 565 or so, followed by 562, very close to 562 actually would be likely be coming. So I'll be watching these levels very, very closely and very, very carefully. All right. So what do I think is going to happen? Will we get a balance? Will we dump lower? My concern is that Israel may once again continue what has already been started, and that could lead to a lot more volatility with the way things are kind of like setting up. So I'm a little bit concerned that there may be more attacks, and we have like a slanted head and shoulders like structure technically on SPY, and the chart looks pretty weak. We just sold off and closed pretty weakly, so I'm starting to think that the odds favor weakness and more downside for the markets. It's looking a little bit more probable, especially with what's happening with the ports. So I think there's a good chance this may continue to dip. We have this gap down here on SPY to fill. It's going to take us all the way down to the 563s. We look bearish on the daily. So I think tomorrow morning we could try to kind of like consolidate, and there's going to be a risk of us dipping if we lose that support, and we could be looking for the mid 560s. It looks more probable to me. We'll see if support holds, but I think we might be dipping lower. Don't forget that when it comes to seasonality and cycles, October tends to be a bearish month. My original view is that the market would try to hold up in its range for the first like week to 2 weeks of October, then start dumping by the second half. But we're already starting to dump as soon as October has started. So this is not the best of signs for bulls. This may lead to more downside. The odds do favor that. So that's what my view is for now. I also want to mention that on ES, we're already losing our 50 EMA. We're still dipping as I speak. So it's still looking bearish right now. It may lead to a gap down tomorrow, maybe, but that depends on the news that comes out. So if we're bullish, you have to reclaim 57.68 at the very least, followed by 57.86. If those two resistance levels get reclaimed, this will bounce. If not, we're at risk of continuing to fall all the way down towards 57.32, the lows of the day, and all the way down to the next imbalance at the 5700 zone. The low 5700s would be our next target. If that fails us, I could see this coming down to fill the gap, unfortunately. So please be mindful of that. We have like a slanted head and shoulders like structure, so this looks more bearish to me. We're also losing our 50 EMA. So this chart is favoring the downwards direction. I want to be very frank about that. Now, what about Tesla? Tesla's holding up relatively well. We're only down 1%, which is still not too bad for Tesla standards. We have a nice cup that's forming. The question is, do we squeeze tomorrow? Do we get a rug pull? This depends on deliveries. If Tesla has strong deliveries, this thing is going to be running to the 270s. If they do really well, they beat expectations, we get a very, very bullish reaction. It's going to pump. If we don't get good deliveries, this could dump to the 240 area. So we want to be open-minded to anything. Now, when are deliveries coming out? They're scheduled for 9 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time tomorrow, 30 minutes before market open. Usually they do come out very close to when they're scheduled. Sometimes they're a little bit late by a few minutes, sometimes like an hour late, but should be coming out tomorrow morning, most likely before the market opens. What do I think is going to happen? Honestly, I don't know, guys. This could go either way. I will tell you this. I'm confident the Chinese sales are going to look good. They're going to be strong. The European sales look a little bit sluggish, so that's a little bit weaker. But then it all comes down to the American sales, which I'm not too sure about. Could go either way. So we will have to wait and see. That's going to be the biggest factor for Tesla. So will Tesla do well in deliveries for Q3 and see a big pump to 270, or will we dump all the way down to 240? We'll just have to wait and see. So be ready, guys. It's going to be very fun to watch and fun to play. I hope the best for Tesla, though. Good luck to all the Tesla investors and employees. For Nvidia, we look a little bit more bearish. We have a gap to fill down here. We need to reclaim 219 to turn bullish, and if we can't do so, we have this gap to fill down here around this 214 area, and an imbalance down here closer to like the 212s. I would say are a little bit more probable. So this looks a little bit more bearish because we have got this rejection off the head and shoulders, and we have the gap to fill. So the odds favor a little bit of a pop, then a drop all the way down to the 114 area or below. So it looks a little bit more bearish to me. That looks more probable in my personal opinion. For Bitcoin, we're looking a little bit more bearish, right? We're kind of rejecting off these resistance levels. The resistance to watch for at 61,732. And if we continue to fall, we're looking for a dip all the way down towards 60,000 flat, like 59,500 to 60,000. My guts is telling me this is going to dip lower towards these lower levels. So the odds favor downside for Bitcoin. For other factors out there, we have NQ. NQ to me is looking a little bit more bearish. We have this resistance to watch for at 20,089 and 20,157. We have this big wick That's taking us all the way down towards the 19,800 area. We also have this imbalance down here at 19,750. So with this head and shoulders, I think the odds favor downside for NQ. It looks more bearish. We have to reclaim 20,000 at least. It does not look like it wants to do that. It looks more like it wants to go down towards our 200 EMA. That's going to be closer to like 19,700 by tomorrow. I think we might be dipping down there. If that breaks, we have a big gap to fill down here. So it still looks bearish, guys. Please be very mindful of that. For the QQQ, we have a head and shoulders like structure. We also have a gap to fill below. So as you can see, we're actually dipping right now as I speak during the after hours. So not a very good sign. We need to reclaim at least 482 and then 485 to turn back up. If we can't do that, we have this gap to fill down here around 475. So look at the support down here at 478 and then 475. We look more bearish, so that favors downside in my personal opinion. For Aapl, we have a double top like structure. Just to be clear, we look more bearish. We have basically 226.35 as resistance and 228. Our main support's all the way down here around this 224 area. My guts tells me we might be dipping all the way down to 224. Then eventually, if that fills us, we have a gap to fill down to 222. Because of what's happening with the ports in the US with the strikes, Apple's looking kind of weak with this bearish bar, and the odds favor 222. For me, that's looking more bearish. For Neo, for those who are interested, it's actually holding really nicely on the 4-hour. They just had their second best deliveries of all time. So this may attempt to push higher as long as we don't lose 7 and then 6.5. We still favor this trying to push. For other tickers out there, we're going to talk about the rest of these. I'm going to break down something else that's important about the markets. We'll see how things go, but a lot of charts that are still looking kind of weak, and we're seeing the algorithms kind of taking over. So this is still looking pretty bearish. So let's talk about Palantir. How's Palantir looking? Palantir has a very, very key resistance at 36.8. If we break past that, we turn back up. If we lose 35.64 tomorrow, look for a dump. We have a head and shoulders like structure. We're barely holding support. So this is favoring. It wants to go all the way down to about the 35s, 35.5, like down here with this imbalances. I think we're most likely coming down lower. It looks more bearish to me. For Supermicro, we look more bearish because we are continuing to reject very, very nicely, and we are not doing the best of job at holding up. So I think there's a good chance that this continues to fall. Even after the stock split, it's still looking kind of weak. So with this rejection right here off this area, I think that's it's still looking pretty weak, even despite their stock split. It tried to rebound only to reject. So it could be dipping all the way down towards the 38.8 area down here. Still looks like it's bearish on a downtrend following Nvidia. For Rivian looks bearish. We had some bad news that came out. I remember reading something. Negative news came out, and that's why the share price went down. I think they got a downgrade from Morgan Stanley. I believe that's what it was. And then also the news today was not the best. So I was anticipating more downside. That was correct, what I said yesterday. So I could see this continue to fall towards about 10.12. I think we dip lower if that fails. We got to see if that holds. If it does not hold and it fails, we're going all the way down to like the 9.5 area. So nonetheless, Rivian looks more bearish, and the odds favor this falling into the 10s. So look for more downside on Rivian. We'll see how things go from here. For SoFi, we look more bearish because we got this rejection right here. This is forming kind of like a lower high rejection, and the support is currently where we're at, around the 7.6 area. So if we lose 7.6, we're looking for 7.48 by tomorrow. If that fails us, we go all the way down to 7.25. Our resistance to watch for is at 7.8. The odds favor 7.5 in my personal opinion. For the IWM Russell 2000, we're kind of rejecting. We had a high here. It came down to a lower high. We need to break past 219 to turn back up. And to be bearish, you want to see it lose to 214. That's going to be our next target. We also have a gap down to like the 212s. So this looks more bearish. We're making lower highs, we're rejecting, and this is getting very close to its 200 EMA. So I think the odds favor this continuing to fall as the market's dipping. I think the market dipped a little bit more since I started this video. So I'm going to double check this. And I'm correct. SPY is dipping lower right now. So is the QQQ. So it's not looking too good for tomorrow. For AMD, it looks more bearish. We need to reclaim 162 to turn back up. If we lose 158, we're looking for a dip all the way down towards 155, 154. I think 154 is the level right over here. And then if that fails us, we're going all the way down to 152.5. So this is looking more bearish, guys. I want to be very honest about that. ARM is looking more bearish. We've lost support at our 200 EMA at 137. If we reclaim 137, we turn back up. If not, we're going to likely continue to fall. I think we could be dipping all the way down to like 130 flat. Looks bearish to me. For Coinbase, we look more bearish. We're just continuing to reject. not doing the best of jobs at holding up. So we have that resistance to watch for around this 164 area, and the main support is currently at 160. If that fails us, we're going all the way down to about 156. I think the odds favor 156 as we look more bearish. For Amazon, we look more bearish. We're rejecting so far. We need to reclaim 187, otherwise we're at risk of coming down to 182.78. I think the odds favor 182.78 followed by 178 as we look more bearish. Meta is rejecting, but it has not lost key support, so it's doing a good job at holding up so far. We have resistance at 580 that's very, very strong, and our support's at 569 to 570. My gut tells me we retest 570 tomorrow, but we'll see if we bounce off that or not. If we bounce off that, there's going to be potential in this. If we don't get that bounce off 570, this is going to continue to fall. So I want to be very, very mindful and open-minded about that, just to give you guys a heads up. For others out there, we have basically Microsoft looking more bearish. So Meta, of all things, is showing some strength, but Microsoft looks more bearish. Microsoft needs to hold 420 and then reclaim 424 to turn back up. If it does not do that, this is favoring, in my personal opinion, this imbalance fill. It's about 414, and it could happen within a couple of days. So this looks more bearish. If 414 doesn't hold, we'd go all the way down to about 410. We look more bearish, in my personal opinion. And let me draw the level out. I know I didn't draw this out yet because we just visited this level for the first time in a long while. So we will see how well it does here. Otherwise, it just favors, the downwards direction if 420 fails us. For others out there, we have Google. Google basically is looking a little bit weaker, but not as weak. Excuse me, not as weak as like Microsoft. So I could see this dipping down towards 165.85. That's going to be our 20 EMA. I think we might be dipping down towards that. We'll see if we bounce or not, but I think this might dip a little bit more and get dragged down with the broader markets. For DJT, for those who are interested, we did pump very nicely to just under 18, only to dip back down. So I think that 15.4 is going to be our target. I think we could be dipping on DJT. We'll see if we bounce. For the VIX, we're trying to rebound. I want to call out that the VIX is looking bullish because when you look at the VIX, we have this gap up here to fill all the way up to 22. So I'm thinking that the VIX is going to continue this rally, push up to 22 plus very soon, and that's because the S&P 500 is about to see another basically leg down as it looks more bearish. Also, what you'll notice is that I think I saw another gap on the VIX. There's actually another gap over here around the 36 area. So there might be another spike in the VIX as the market becomes more volatile and starts dipping. This will lead to, premiums becoming a lot more expensive on the short side, and it's going to lead to basically implied volatility going up. So with that happening, I think what's going to happen is we're going to see a big shift in, levels and premiums. And we're also going to see that reflect on SPY in the broader market. So I just want to call that out. There's another sign of weakness. The 10-year has been coming down a bit since Jerome Powell's speech yesterday, but it's still flat, not really affecting the market as much. And then the dollar is starting to bounce. So here's the important thing. The dollar had this bullish divergence. I was talking about this in my video. So we're going to be watching to see if the dollar breaks 101.4. That's very close to where our 200 EMA happens to be. If we break that, we're looking for a pump all the way up to 101.6. If it rejects here, we're dipping back down to 100.8. That's going to be our 15, 20 EMAs. This is favoring upside for 101.7 to much higher levels. So we'll see if that ends up being the case. So with that being said, guys, the dollar index is trying to rebound. It hasn't broken key resistance yet, but this is helping and contributing to why the market's dipping lower. It was no surprise. I did mention that yesterday. My view of the market was I was expecting downside by the second half of October. I was saying that the market was not going to last at the levels, and that was technically correct. It just happened like way sooner than what I was even thinking because unexpected pieces of news end up coming out. And then on top of this, I just want to call out that we'll see what ends up happening overnight. That's the thing that kind of concerns me. We'll see if the situation continues to escalate because right now, Israel's military is saying they're going to once again continue this. They're going to play self-defense, and at least from their interpretation. So I'm not taking any sides. I'm just trying to say that this is what they're trying to do. One side's defending themselves, the other side wants to defend the other. And it's just going back and forth like that, right? One side has their own arguments, the other side has their other arguments. I'm not here to take sides. So tensions remain very, very high. I hope for peace. I really, really do not want there to be more war. For those who are out there who believe in prayer, right, this is the time for those out there who believe in it. And I just want to say that I hope for the best. Let's see what ends up happening. If there's more, attacks that happen on either side overnight, it could be more negative for the markets. And then also we're waiting to see what's happening right here with the strikes that are going on. This is affecting some tech stocks like Apple. So we'll see what happens with all of this overnight. So I'll be back tomorrow morning before the market opens to give you guys another update on how things are looking. So let's just hope for the best. There's nothing wrong with praying about, for peace and etc. And I just want to say, guys, I appreciate you guys so much for listening. So please have a great night, great day, great evening, wherever you guys are. And I'll see you guys very soon tomorrow before the market opens. Thank you and peace out.